It's inevitable when you're going to be working with this many dependencies and constraints between tasks that you're going to run into some conflicts. So what does Project 2007 do for you when you run into a conflict? Well, let's take a look at the kind of screen that you're going to see. Let's say I'm going to open up this particular task, building site skeleton, and it's got to be dependent upon the completion of task 9. So I put in my number 9, I enter it, and I click OK. Everything looks good to this point. Oops, now I get a scheduling conflict wizard, and that's the power behind Project 2007. It's going to tell you when you have a scheduling conflict. And it's at that point in time you can determine whether you're going to avoid the scheduling conflict to cancel this action altogether, or are you going to continue and allow the scheduling conflict to take place. So whenever you run into an issue, Project 2007 will present you with a dialog box. It will identify where the task is and what the problem is, and then you can assess whether or not this is something that you can live with or not. In this case, I'm going to say continue, allow that scheduling conflict. I'll deal with it later. I'll click OK, and the conflict is allowed and the information is added into the system. Now, when you're working with a conflict, usually the default is that the constraint will determine whether or not the conflict takes place. If you want to allow dependencies to determine the timing of the conflict, you can change that default in Project by going up to the Tools menu, down to the Options command, going to the Schedule tab if it's not already selected, and then deselecting the selection that says Tasks will always honor their constraint dates. Taking that off will allow dependencies to determine the schedule of your overall project. If you are used to working within Project and you feel that that is an appropriate change for you, by all means make that change in the Options tab. For those of you that are new, I would leave that selected so that the constraints are always going to tell you and flag you with a wizard in order for you to determine whether or not you want to override that. So the power of Project 2007 is shown quite quickly here by having the intelligence behind the scenes that when you are putting in your dependencies, it will identify for you where potential conflicts will arise in just the planning of your project. So in these last few movies, we've learned about creating dependencies between our tasks. So now we've got the what. What are we going to do? How long is it going to take us? What's dependent on? The next thing we need to talk about is our resources. Who is going to do the work and what else do we need? That will be covered in our next set of movies.